Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaKadosh. And I want to say Shalom to Yaakov Akwat out there, who's doing this true diligently. Coming at you once again with another lesson. And this one's titled simply, Slavery was never truly ended. Right? Slavery was never truly ended. And the fact of the matter is that there's an American fallacy, really not just American, but primarily, American, that slavery has been ended, the slaves were free, we're all free, right? What's the slogan of America? Land of the brave and the home of the free. That's what it is. Right? I never learned that when I was in school. We sung everyone. I don't remember it. I couldn't even tell you the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. So I only remember certain parts of it. But they make it evident, or to the best of their ability, that you are free. Right? They throw that term freedom. Oh, you got more freedoms in America. America's the land of the free. Free this, free that, freedom of speech, free this, right? Freedom of religion, freedom of all these different things, right? They pride themselves on this illusion of freedom, right? This illusion of freedom that America really doesn't have, if you really look into it. They're really more of like, instead of freedoms or rights, they're more like temporary allowances, okay, that they grant. And a lot of people are under the guise that slavery was truly ended. And that's just not the case. And it's really inspired by a Reddit post that I happened to see earlier. And I got a screenshot of it here. And bear with me. But yeah, it's a screenshot here. And it says, Americans are built different. And it says, Europeans, I am holidaying. Your emails will be forwarded nowhere to be read by no one. Good day. And then it says Americans. And of course it shows this picture of a woman by the beach on her phone holding a laptop, in some sort of stressful situation. And this is the type of situation that will occur, and people will still say they're free. That's not free. Okay? That's not freedom. As a matter of fact, let's go and define what freedom is. Okay? Close out of some of this random shit. Let's go define freedom. So freedom. Okay? It says the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Okay? It says absence of subjection to foreign domination or despotic government. Okay? Which means type of despot, tyrannical. Alright? Or despotic, right? So, and this is a tyrannical government. Well, let's go on what tyrannical means. All right, tyrannical, exercising power in a cruel or arbitrary way, and it is arbitrary, doing it just to do it, right? Oppressive and controlling. Okay, a characteristic of tyranny is oppressive and controlling. Okay, oppressive means unjustly inflicting hardship and constraint, especially on a minority or other subordinate group. Okay? Weighing heavily on the mind or spirits, causing depression or discomfort. And everybody's in a state of depression and discomfort in this place, all right, other than the filthy rich Edomites. Okay? So, you might not necessarily feel like you're depressed, but you're at least, in a state of discomfort. Okay? You're not comfortable. You'd rather be in a more comfortable situation. You'd rather be in a better situation. So, we're in a situation where we're really still in slavery. We don't have any freedom. Okay? We have zero freedom. But America is under the guise, we're so free. You're not free. Okay, you're under a tyrannical government that oppresses you. All right, regardless, even if you are an Edomite, they're still taking taxes. I mean, now the new thing is that I just found out today is that in 2026 you'll no longer be able to file your own taxes. Trump put an end to that. All right, now you got to go to H&R Block and pay the, however much money, the couple $100 or whatever the fuck they want. Right, you can't file your own. I used to file my own. Right, now you can't do it. They don't want you to do it anymore. No longer can you self-file. Okay, put an end to that one. Okay. So, you can say it's Trump, the IRS, whoever, really it's more the IRS, but it's the same shit. It's all under this tyrannical regime, okay? And people love it here. People that know, we're free. You're not free. You're free to do as you're told, okay? That's what you're free to do. This is Nahum 3:1. It says, woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. Of course, the prey being Jacob, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as well as the speckled birds that are, go back to the same bloodline but don't look like so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? And like it said, it is all full of lies and robbery, okay? And they'll lie to you, okay? Notably, it's full of robbery as well. They'll rob you and then lie to you that they didn't. No, we didn't take any money from you. Yes, you did. No, we didn't. We didn't take 1 ounce of money. What's all this money missing? I don't know. Must have been something different. Wasn't us. Sure it was. Right? It says your name right on it. Well, I had nothing to do with it. You might not have had nothing to do with it, but someone did. Alright? But, that's just the way they run. It's full of lies and robbery. And like it says, the prey departeth not. They want to stay here. Alright? You're a fly in a spider's, not nest, web. You're a fly in a spider's web. And it's quite comfortable, actually. These webs are pretty great. The spiders do sure make a great web for us to live in. Right? And that's what you want. Right? And until the spider comes, and everyone say, hey man, it's all fun and games, that spider's going to come back and eat your ass. And you say, no, he wouldn't do that to me. Right? He used to eat flies. He doesn't eat flies anymore. Right? And that's how you're going to say it until he comes back and eats you. And then what? Then what? Right? And matter of fact, let's go and define slavery, okay? Because a lot of people don't even know what slavery is. And a lot of people like to say, slavery was this and that. Well, a lot of people only think of the transatlantic slave trade as how slavery works. All right, or they say, all people had slaves. You're right. The Asians had slaves. The Arabics had slaves. The Arabics were especially terrible with their slave rings that they ran. But, none was as bad as Esau during the transatlantic slave trade. Even old E wasn't as bad, right, when it came to, the Romans. All right, they were pretty bad, but they weren't as bad as Esau, during the transatlantic slave trade, completely lost their mind. Right? Completely lost their mind. And they just went overboard. They went completely overboard. Okay? Did everything they could. They think it's sick shit. We should shove broomsticks up their ass. We should also put a bag over their head and make them fuck their own mothers. Wouldn't it be funny if we just, chop their own dick off? What if we did sick gay shit with it? Oh my God, what if we raped them? Right? What if we put our wieners in their butts right in front of everybody? Won't that just be oppressive for them? Couldn't we? What if we just made couches out of their hair? That nice Negro hair. What if we just did? What else could we? What if we fed their babies to alligators? I bet we could eat their flesh. You ever wonder what human flesh tastes like? They went completely crazy, man. They went savage, barbaric. All right, they turned into barbarians. Okay, they've always been barbarians, but they turned into extra barbarians with an extra side of barbarianism. Right? Extra. Barbarians 2.0 instead of 1.0. Right? They leveled up on the barbarianism. And, and you see it here. It says, and they don't really even have the real definition of what it is. It says, slavery is the forced, unfree labor of one person by another, often involving brutality or dehumanization. Slavery, it says the ownership of a person as property, especially in regards to their labor. Now, the one thing you need to understand, and you probably won't be able to find this information, but birth certificates are technically bought and sold. Is that they're technically traded almost like a stock. All right, you are technically still owned. It says the statement that birth certificates are technically bought and sold is a misconception based on a false claim that they are negotiable financial instruments. While individuals pay a fee to obtain a certified copy of their birth certificate from the government, this is a purchase of a legal document, not a purchase of the certificate and it's a loophole. All right, you're not selling anybody, sure, right? But it's not that. Let's say there are people that believe you see, today I learned, right here. It says, today I learned that there are people who believe our birth certificates are actually bonds for money deposited in our names at birth, and these bonds are traded like stocks on the NYSE. And they are. But they're not ever going to release that information. That's deep information. They're never going to, those are the type of things that are so deep, they can easily say, that's fake, that's a conspiracy theory. And everyone says, hey, that's fake, that's a conspiracy theory, and they move past it. All right, there's a lot of things that are just conspiracy theories, right, until they become conspiracy facts. As a matter of fact, let's do this. Let's do this. All right. List a bunch of conspiracies that were once theories, but were indeed found to be factual. And there's a whole bunch of them. MK Ultra was one of them. It says, yeah, plenty of things once written off as crazy conspiracy theories actually turned out to be real. Some even confirmed by the government, by government documents later on. Here's a list of some of the biggest ones that were once dismissed but ended up being true, or at least strongly verified by evidence and declassified files. There it is, MK Ultra, a CIA mind control program. The CIA really did run mind control experiments using LSD, hypnosis, and psychological torture on the unwilling subjects during the 1950s through 70s. Declassified documents confirm it. But they stopped, right? The CIA doesn't do that anymore. There's nothing that they're doing that we don't know about anymore. They would never go and do anything. They learned their lesson. They would never do that. Mind you, how long did it take for these documents to come out? Years upon years, okay? There's shit that, I found a document out there before, I believe it was before, no, it wasn't before. It was right during the beginning of the pandemic, all right? And it talked about, I think it was from... No, I can't. It was one of the Ivy League schools. I can't. I'm not gonna try to name it because I don't remember which one it was. I know it wasn't Harvard. It might have been. Cambridge. It might have been. I don't know. I want to say it was. Was it Princeton? It was one of it. It was either probably Cambridge or Princeton, I think. And it was talking about. It was basically, it came out from them about a theory on, basically running programs, every few years, what if one was to run a program to desensitize for a global event? And it was on one of the Princeton websites or something. It was Princeton or like Cambridge. It was on one of the websites, but it was like a government-looking document. Right? Not just a study document. It looked very, very official, more official than an Ivy League school, which is saying something. And it was talking about how, a wide test, there would be a test in 2000, and then there would be a test in around 2008. There would be a test, and around some other time around, a little bit after. And then there would be another test ultimately in 2020 or 2019. All right, basically seeing how people would react to a global, demic, okay, a global event. And I was never able to find that document again. I should have downloaded it. I should have saved it. I wish I would have. I was never able to find it again, unfortunately. But But yeah, man, so they plan these things. And also, you got to realize that the mRNA was patented, all right, for the, not just a regular mRNA, but specifically for the vid, okay, was patented in 2017. There's a patent. You can go and look that one up. Last time I checked, it was still there. So, why in 2017? Just 2 years before it would actually happen. Interesting. Why would they patent it? And then remember how they said, we're not going to be able to get one out for several years, and then it came out in a matter of months? Remember that? Interesting. What else? Operation Northwoods. In 1962, U.S. military leaders proposed staging a fake terrorist attack on Americans to justify war with Cuba. The plan was rejected, but the documents were later declassified. That's the same. It might have been the one or one of the similar ones that actually ended up leading JFK to his death. COINTELPRO. There's another one. It says the FBI illegally spied on, infiltrated, and sabotaged civil rights groups, anti-war activists, and political organizations like the Black Panthers and Martin Luther King Jr.'s movement. And he was infiltrated. It was an infiltrated group. All right, and they're still doing the same thing with the Hebrew Israelites. All right, we already know. All right, but the difference is, this is a little bit different. All right, they're going to be weeded out. The Lord will sift them out. All right, they'll be revealed or something, one or another. All right, Operation Mockingbird. Declassified evidence in Senate hearings showed that the CIA had journalists on payroll influencing media coverage both domestically and abroad during the Cold War. Project Sunshine, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. There you go. From 1930s to 70s, the U.S. Public Health Service deliberately left black men untreated for syphilis to study the disease's natural progression even after penicillin became available. Operation Paperclip, the business plot, Operation Gladio, the big tobacco cover-up, the ban on HIV-contaminated blood, the Operation Sea Spray, there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons, but they're all just conspiracy theories, right? None of them ever happened. Right? And that's the thing. So people will say, people actually think this. It's not more than a conspiracy. Well, it's not, it's you would say it's a conspiracy theory because it is a conspiracy, but you haven't proved it to be fact yet. All right, we know it's a fact already. All right, we've said things, and then they come to find out to be true because you dumbasses, and I'm not being proud, I'm just saying you dumbasses out there, you're too dumb to see it. We'll say, hey, man, it's obviously this is a real conspiracy. No, that's just a theory. It's a theory. Well, now it's a fact. Congratulations. All right. So, you see, it says, so I work in NYSE tech support and overheard a call today by someone being asked about the millions owed to them. I never heard of this conspiracy theory. There you go. And the more I dug into it, the more I was fascinated. Here's how to check the value of your birth certificate. Here's a video on it. Here's a Snopes message thread on it. It says, trying to get me to plug in my birth certificate to that website. You can't make it any clearer that you're trying to trade me for some NYSE stock. And he's joking, but I mean, it's so high up there, you're never gonna be able to see it without doing significant, research. Okay, you'll never be able to find it out without doing significant research. And even if you did, it'll be so deep that you probably won't even understand it. Okay, it's like the same thing that people don't think. There are people out there that still think the whole privately funded prisons and then the whole gangster rap music is just a conspiracy theory. But there's a lot of men out there, I almost said brothers, brothers, but not brothers, right? Not brothers in this truth, but brothers, all right? So-called, black guys, black men, all right, that have told you, I'm sure there's some Latino, and Native American, of course, because Latino and Native American are really mixed in. You can't always tell who's who. Same with even so-called black folk. A lot of them are actually native. All right, so we don't really know who we really are at the end, because you might look like a so-called Mexican or a so-called black guy. All right, and you might end up, being reversed. All right, you might be the so-called, the black guy might be the so-called Mexican, and the Mexican might be the so-called black guy, because the so-called Mexican guy goes back to Judah, and the so-called black guy goes back to Issachar. You just don't know. All right, and vice versa. There's a lot of so-called black guys that actually go back to Gad. All right, which would be the Native Americans. All right, you got to realize we were all mixed together. All right, so we were getting down with each other, so we don't really know who's who. At the end of the day, I mean, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans were all brothers. We're all 12 tribes. It can be hard to really know. You have to go off the spirit and see how you feel, right? So there's some brothers out there that look like so-called black people. All right, but they'll say, Gad. All right, I myself, for example, am a so-called Latino. But I believe I go back to Benjamin more than likely, right, of the Southern Kingdom, which would be so-called, that would be considered so-called Negro, right? So But yeah, man, and it's the same thing with that. That's factual, and you can go in the Bible and look into bloodline. People consider that a conspiracy. Everything, look, anything that's too deep for someone to really understand and comprehend, conspiracy theory. All right, and then they move on. All right, so these are the type of people, even if you gave them all the information, you laid it out, all right, and you linked it all together, they still wouldn't be able to get it. All right, it's like the Lord said. It said, if I have told you of worldly things and you believe me not, how much more so are you going to believe me if I tell you of spiritual things? Okay, roughly paraphrasing, of course. Not the exact wording. But, so it's the same thing. If we're preaching the word of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai and trying to come in the like manner, if we're trying to teach you something that is beneficial in this truth that you should know, but it's not necessarily this truth, if you can't even learn that, you're not going to be able to learn the truth, because in order to understand the mystery, you got to understand the history, as the apostles and elders of Great Millstone always say. Right, and that's who we learn from. All right, well, me, an affiliate, and then the brothers and sisters that are following after the saint, really the house of David. All right, followers of the house of David. Okay, and GMS and their true affiliates are the ones that are building up the house of David. Okay, they're the only ones with the truth. All right, the full truth, 100% truth. I won't say they're the only ones with the truth. They're the only ones with the 100% truth. You can get maybe 5% out of IUIC, right? Give or take. Right? If you can get past all their theatrics, all right, you might be able to get a little bit more, but half the breakdowns are going to be incorrect. All right, that's the because I felt like it camp. All right, my feelings camp, which is really feminine. All right, they go off on emotion, the emotional theatrics camp. All right, the bring it out camp. All right, that's just theatrics marching through the street, bring it out, bring it out, bring it out. Right, and then having those sound effects on that explosion. Play that sound effect, brother. Right? So, making AI videos and stuff. That's what you can get from them. Right? And, but yeah, if you want the truth, you got to understand the mystery. You got to understand the history. Okay? You can't, if you don't know what slavery is, how are you going to understand what slavery is? Right? So slavery, it says, the forced, unfree labor of one person by another, often involving brutality and dehumanization. That's what they say. But what is the main idea of slavery? It says, enslaved person is typically treated as property by their enslaver. Okay, and legally we are technically property of the U.S. government. Okay, us that are in America. All right, we are technically property of the U.S. government. Okay, we are bought and sold and owned. All right, property of the U.S. government. All right, and and that's the same way that why babies can be stripped away from you. Don't own anything. That baby is owned by the state. Okay, the government. That's why CPS can come in and take your kid away. If you truly owned, they wouldn't be able to take away anything from you, especially not your child. But they can come in and say, "Oh, house was dirty. Found drugs. Take the kid away," and your house was clean as a whistle. All right, and you never did drugs in your life, clean, and you were clean as a whistle. All right, straight edge, never even touched a drink, and they could say, "Oh yeah, she was on heroin, he was on heroin, and the house was dirty," right? And that's it. And your kids are gone, boom, and you'll never get them back again. All right, they can say you're not safe for yourself, sir, and they can lock you away in a mental ward, right? They can say that you did a crime that you never did and lock you away for the rest of your life. Okay, that's not being free. Okay, that is slavery. Okay, and it's slavery. You have to bust your back and make another company profit, not work for yourself, not work because, oh, y'all don't want to work. No, the real way to work would be to work and build up. All right, do something of your own. All right, as far as regular work, of course, the real work is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai's word. That's the real work. But I mean, as far homesteading would be the real work. You get up in the morning, and I heard a guy say it. Said they act like it's hard work, but it's not like you get up for a 9 to 5, and then you dread it. All right, you get up and you say, okay, I got to milk the cows because I got to get the milk. I got to go and check on the chickens because I got to get the eggs. All right, I got to go and check on this because I got to have this. All right. And it's all profit, okay? There's no take away, okay? And then there's even more profit by you can sell that and get, money for it, right? Of course, you pay your bills. You still got to pay taxes because they're going to get you somehow, right? It's America. They want your money. So got to pay the taxes and all that. So, but yeah, man, it's not, you have to do it. If you don't work for this company, you're not going to have a house. And even if you do, you're still not going to have a house, right? You might be allowed to rent, okay, you might be allowed to rent, okay? Unless you strike it big and you got in a good situation, the odds are you probably aren't going to own a house, okay? Unless you bought it a long time ago, or you came into some money a long time ago, or at any given point and you got a house that way, or a relative died and you got a house that way, or, you inherited it somehow, all right? Then the odds are you probably won't get a home, all right? You'll probably be subjected to be a renter, all right, for most of your life, okay? So, and they say, why did slavery end? It's, the practice of forced labor, whether one person of group owns another's property, stripping them of their liberty and rights. And a lot of rights are stripped away, okay? A lot of rights are stripped away, absolutely, constantly. So another thing I want to do is open ChatGPT again. So that goes back to, Nahum 1, or Nahum 3 and 1, excuse me, with the, lies and robbery, okay? You've been told that you have a freedom. You don't have any freedoms, okay? Here's the thing you need to understand. How did slavery work in Roman times? Were they allowed? Well, no, I'm not going to even do that, right? No reason to, put something into its mind. I'll see if it says it, and then I'll ask it if not. So, slavery in ancient Rome was a massive and deeply ingrained part of their society, not just an economic system, but a social one, too. Here's how it worked. War captives. Most slaves came from conquered territories: Gaul, Greece, Carthage, Egypt, Judea, right? There's Judah, etc. Entire populations could be enslaved after defeat. Born in slavery, children born into enslaved mothers were automatically slaves. Hence the Latin term was verna for homeborn slave. Debt and punishment. Early in Rome's history, people could sell themselves or be enslaved for debt, though this later faded out. Trade. There was a huge market for slaves, bought, sold, and even gifted like property. So it says types of work. Slaves weren't all doing the same things. There were different ranks and kinds of labor depending on the skill, location, and luck. Household slaves served Roman families, cooking, cleaning, raising children, managing estates. They were usually better off and could sometimes earn freedom. You could earn freedom. You can't earn freedom here. It says field or mine slaves worked brutal, back-breaking jobs. Mining was a death sentence for most. The conditions were horrific. Okay, public slaves owned by the state. They maintained roads, aqueducts, temples, or worked the bureaucratic roles. That sounds like construction to me. Skilled slaves. Educated Greeks were highly valued. They became tutors, doctors, scribes, and even accountants. These are slavery jobs, mind you. These are all jobs for people that are enslaved, legal status. They were property, not citizens. They could be punished, sold, or killed by their owners. Okay, and you could be punished, sold, or killed by your owners, the United States government. They owned you. You are owned by the government. Okay, if they want to kill you, they could put you to death. They absolutely could. They could make something up and put you to death over it. Okay, it says, but over time, laws developed some protections, especially under the later Republican Empire. For example, the owner couldn't kill a slave without reason during the empire. Kind of like how it is now. They have to have a reason, right? It says they could own money, peculum, unofficially, often saved to buy their own freedom. Okay, manumission, freedom. Slaves could be freed by their masters as a reward for loyalty or service, or sometimes they bought it themselves. Freed slaves, liberty, liberty, became Roman citizens, though with some limits. They couldn't hold high political office, but their children could. Okay, same thing. If you were a slave, you can't really hold high political office here. It says freedom often continued working. Freedmen often continued working for their former masters or ran a business. So it says social and cultural role. Slaves were everywhere. It's estimated up to a third of Rome's population were slaves during the height of the empire. Society accepted slavery as a natural order of things. Philosophers like Aristotle or Roman writers like Seneca even rationalized it. There were slave revolts, the most famous being Spartacus's rebellion, 73 to 71 BCE, which terrified Rome but ultimately failed. Treatment, totally dependent on the owner. Some masters were cruel, others were relatively humane. They could be branded, whipped, executed for disobedience. We just have a different flavor of slavery. However, trusted slaves can become part of the family or manage entire states, earning some significant autonomy. So here's the question. Could they own property? Did they have free time? Did they go home to families? compared to transatlantic slave trade with black folk. It says, that's a solid question, and yeah, comparing Roman slavery to the transatlantic slave trade shows both big overlaps and major differences. All right, could they own property? Officially, no. That's I've seen accounts where they said yes, but it says legally slaves were property, so they can own anything in their name, but in practice, many had what was called a peculum, basically a personal fund or allowance that their masters let them manage. They could save money, buy small goods, or even run side businesses. Some masters allowed them to even buy their freedom using that money. It says everything technically still belonged to the master. Peculum was respected as the slave's personal property. Personal ownership. You could probably rent. All right, I'm asking. I should have asked that. Can they rent? Did they have free time? Again, it depended on what type of slave you were. Household slaves might have evening free or rest days, especially the days off. Especially those trusted to manage chores and errands. Skilled or educated slaves often had structured work days, or could socialize or peruse hobbies after hours. Field and mine slaves, though, no shot. They worked sun up to sundown, often chained, living in barracks under the guard. That was the pure survival, no leisure. See, that one's more like how they did Jake and transatlantic slave trade. All right, it says, did they have families or home? It says that one's tragic. They could, but it was always fragile. Slaves could form relationships and have children, but Roman law didn't recognize slave marriages. Basically just called it living together. Kids of slaves were born slaves belonging to the master. Families could be split up and sold at any time. Domestic slaves living in cities sometimes had semi-stable family lives. Plantation and mine slaves did not. Mind you, these are Edomites, but it still wasn't as bad. So, you can go and see, the differences between, Roman and transatlantic on each one, right? So treatment varied widely. Some lived decently, others were brutally abused. Transatlantic slave trade, extremely brutal and dehumanizing by design. Torture and psychological control were systemic. Okay, integration. Freedmen could integrate into Roman society, though not into the elite circles. Freed black people remained racially segregated and oppressed even after emancipation. So you can see that, look, it's not the same thing. There's different forms and there's different levels of slavery. Okay, there's different levels of slavery. So yes, in this state, you are bought and sold. You're, a corporate asset, all right, to your job. All right, they can call you at any time. All right, they can force you to come in at any time, and if you don't, you can lose your job. You can lose your job if you don't. All right, actually, I don't even know why I closed that out. Let me reopen it. But yeah, you could lose your job. So let's get Micah 2:10. And it says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction." A lot of people want to stay here for that sore destruction. They love it. They want to go down with this place, all right, because they couldn't imagine any life without America. They love America. Americanism is their pride and joy, right? They without America, what type of world would we be, right? They need that Americanism, right? It gets them by. Bear with me, Mark, grab a drink. They love the freedom to do wickedness, is what they really like. We don't have many freedoms, but you have freedom to do wickedness. All right, you can go and be a homosexual, all right? You can go ahead and do that. But, you can't just do whatever you want at the end of the day. You have to have, some confines and be, really you're owned by a corporate. You're owned by a corporate, all right? You're owned by your corporate overlords, whether it be your job or whether it be, the government. All right, you are owned in one way or another, all right? So I can put some of this chapstick on my ashy-ass lips. But, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, right? So, but a lot of people don't, they're ignorant of the fact that they're slaves. They don't want to be thought of as slaves because no one wants to think they're a slave, right? So they just put it outside of their mind, and they're not a slave because they're not thinking they're a slave. That's how it works, right? Nope. So let's read in, and I was reading some of these comments. It's great. I wish I would have saved one video I had. It was basically a guy over in China talking about A guy was basically trying to be an asshole. He's saying, oh, yeah, well, China has poverty too. It's not, just because America has poverty doesn't mean places don't have poverty. He said, yeah, China does have poverty, but China's ultimate poverty level is middle class. The middle class is what would be considered middle class over here. He said the poorest of the people live in remote villages. They get fresh fish delivered every single day. They have a family. All right, they live in a mid-sized home. All right, they don't starve. That's the poverty level, okay, in China. He was saying it. He says people are living better over there. He says just because, I can't remember what he said. He said just because that's happening in America, don't try to project it onto other countries, okay, because that's an American thing, okay, and it's true. All right, America's a fucking shithole. And America's so great. No, it's not. You've never been outside of this place, you hillbilly fuck. All right, take your dick out, your sister, and go look around on the internet and see what the fucking type of shit's out there, right? Because this place is not great, okay? Make America great. When was it ever great? It was never great, okay? They never provided their citizens with free health care, all right? They never provided every citizen with vacation time. No. You have to be a manager or above to receive anything like that. You have to be on a higher level. If you're just a regular employee, you don't get any time off. Fuck you. All right, you get your days off and that's it. And you don't get paid for those. You never get any PTO. Right? Other countries, they will, like in pretty much all of Europe, they will force you. They say, hey, you have to take, I think it's a mandatory 5 months. Right? Some up to 6 months that you have to take off. And if you refuse, you could get in trouble or they'll forcibly pay you out. Right? It's paid. Could you imagine getting 4 to 5 months off your job paid? I fucking love that. Right? I would love that. But unfortunately, I happen to live in America. This person says, in France, we have what is called the right to disconnect. Outside of working hours, we have no obligation to respond to messages or calls or to check our emails. So during our vacations, everything that happens at work ceases to exist for me. My office could catch fire and 3 of my colleagues could die, and I would only find out about it when I got back from vacation. Now here, they'll call you 3 times, ring you, text, hey man, we need you. Hey man, come in. And thankfully, call all you how about me, how shy, I don't have that. But I still get texts when I'm off work. Right? Now, I muted everything because it's on a WhatsApp, all right, WhatsApp group chat, all right, but, I have it muted. I have my boss muted on my texts, so I'll see a badge, but I won't hear it. It won't take, if I'm playing a video game, I ain't going to hear, ping! Nope, I ain't going to hear shit, all right? I ain't going to see nothing until I'm open on my phone, and I'm on the home menu, and I see the little thing. I don't have notification, like, in the up at the top of the phone, they have the little notification. I don't have that comes up on those. Nope, nothing. The only way is I'm going to see that little red 1. All right, I'm going to say, oh, there's something in there. It may be for me. It may not be for me. It could be a DM or it could be a group chat message. I don't know what it is. Let me check it out and see. All right, and sometimes I just do it to see what the drama is going on, right? But I'm not obligated, right? They probably am. I'm not going to look at it, right? Thankfully, I'm in a position where I don't have to. It says, for me, but it happens as soon as I clock out. It says, for me, it's like that even if I'm at work. It says, for me, I don't work. And then people just going on into a joke spiel. This person says, totally accurate. I live in Poland, and I was working for an American company for 10 years. It was totally normal for them to work during their holiday. But what's worse is that they were surprised that we're not doing the same. Like, we have to explain over and over again that we're on holiday. We're not going to reply to emails, answer calls. Also, it's completely normal for them to use private phones to install Teams, Outlook, and be online 24/7. It's funny because, I have to use my private phone to be on that. It says, not Teams, but like I said, WhatsApp. It's the same story. They were shocked that you may end your workday at 4 to 5 p.m. and don't care about it until the next day. Dark times. It says, if I took work calls and emails on my personal phone, I'd be sacked. It's a major data breach. So, you see it. This person says, I take PTO for a week, and Sunday night my managers are asking for status updates just for the sake of getting updates. There's no pressing deadlines. Bosses act like the sky is falling if someone isn't on call 24/7. It says, and this guy replied to it, and he says, in countries that I know, on-call time is paid, but less than work time, and need to be planned at that moment. You answer the phone, you're paid for the actual work time done. This person says, we have a minimum of 3 hours full pay if someone calls while on call, even if it's a single 30-second question. Right? It says we have the similar, but it's 1 hour, I believe, in the U.S. I didn't know about. See, I couldn't enforce this shit at my job. They just sack my ass. It said, because that happens all the time. It says, I don't know if it's state specific, but there's a law here. But yeah, man, so you see it, and people are really, they really think that they got it, right? They really think that they got it. You know, and that's why we got to be smart. We got to understand that what we're in is a form of slavery, okay? You're right. We're not being whipped. We're not being subjected to the same amount of things that we were subjected to during the transatlantic slave trade. All right, but the fact of the matter, it's still a flavor of slavery. If I handed you a Kit Kat, all right, and I said, this is a candy bar, and you said, this ain't a candy bar, a Snickers is a candy bar, it's a different flavor. It's still a fucking candy bar, right? It's the same shit, all right? Just a different flavor, okay? So Matthew 10:6 says, not 10 and 6, Matthew 10 and 16. The 1 didn't, maybe I didn't type in the 1. And 16. It says, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So we got to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. The focus word for this lesson is wise as serpents. If you don't know you're likened unto a slave, then you're just dumb. You're just dumb. You don't know what's going on in the world. Okay, you have no idea. You just have no idea. And we know that it's like this, all right? Because again, let's get 2 Corinthians 2 and 2. One we get a lot. Come on now. But 2 Corinthians 2 and 2 reads, for I... Bet that's supposed to be... Yep. Supposed to be 11. I don't even know how that got there. It's interesting. Yeah. So 2 Corinthians 2 and 11, it says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. We're not ignorant, okay? We're not ignorant that we're still under slavery. I mean, a lot of Jake are, but us that are in this truth, we're not, okay? We're under a different form of slavery, okay? So, you know, I mean, I had to work all day today just to barely get a paycheck that'll barely pay for, you know, my bills and food, okay? If that ain't slavery, you know, if it wasn't slavery, we'd be able to work a livable wage. And I don't mean a get by wage, a livable wage. We'd be able to have no issue like, ooh, rent's going to be a little tight this month. No. We'd be able to have our car or have a car note, all right? We'd be able to have a house, all right, or an apartment, and we'd be able to just be like, okay, yeah, I got my car note and I have this, you know, mortgage or whatever, rent or whatever I'm paying off, but I still have enough to be able to buy the groceries to get me by and not have to be like, ooh, I might have to put that back. Oh, we're going to have to put something back, right? Every Jake knows the fucking feeling of having to put something back, and you have to fucking stare in your cart and be like, man, what the fuck am I about to put back, okay? And you got to figure out what you want to put back, right? And you got some things in there that are snacks, and you don't really need them, but you're so stressed out at the same time, you're like, man, I really want those fucking snacks. I don't want to have to put those things back. That's a one treat that I can have for myself. I got to put that shit back. All right? And then you got to start putting the shit back. And then you got just barely half of essentials. And I say half of essentials because you ain't got the full essentials. You have half of what you need. All right? You need a little bit more, but you only got half of what you need. You're like, oh, well, that's all I can afford. I mean, at that point, you know, you might as well, you know, that, well, you ain't. That's because of the money. Look, at that point, I don't think a $4 more bag of chips is going to make you or break you. If a $4 bag of chips is going to be what's making you or break you, you're already having issues with the groceries, my boy. Right? You're already having some issues. Right? Now, I know that's how it is with me. If am I going to put these chips back? I already can barely afford groceries. If I got to put a bag of chips back, All right. I mean, healthy chips. That's the other thing. If you want to eat like, you're not trying to fucking kill yourself. All right, eating seed oils and shit. Yeah, you're gonna spend a little bit more money. But in a job you're working, if it's $15 an hour, you should be getting paid, probably $25 an hour. If you're getting paid $25 an hour, you probably deserve to be getting paid $35 to $45 an hour for what you're doing. They always underpay you no matter what position you're in, unless you're in a really white Edomite, so-called white, white because that's all the people you see there are so-called white-looking Edomite position. Where, they're, hey, how are you doing, Jim? Welcome in. Just wonderful weather we're having today. I talked to Martha the other day. The deadlines are just coming in, but, it's just great. We got a new coffee machine. Did you know it? The seasonal things came in. We got peppermint gingerbread coffee. Oh, it sure is a kick. You should go and give yourself a try. It's delicious. It's delicious. There's a little bit of Splenda over there. You should put it in there. It's fantastic. I love it. Isn't it a great day to be an Edomite, Jim? Just fantastic. Wonderful. Well, got to get back to my business. Hey, tell Maria I said hi. Right? Unless you get into one of those jobs, you ain't making what you need to live. You ain't making what you need, right? You're making what you need to survive, but not what you need to live, right? So, like me and my wife, we get by, but I'd like to have more groceries, right? I'd like to be able to go there and not be like, ooh, all right, take out the fish, right? So we'll get this, and then we could probably scrape by until the next check, and then we'll get to fish. We got enough right now to scrape by, and then we'll get some more. And nobody wants to have to live like that. All right, and here it is. You're working almost every day, right? And even if you worked one more day, even if you picked up one more day, that's what, 5 more items in the cart, because the groceries are so fucking expensive these days. So. And I'm saying that because they always, you're making excuses. No, you guys are making excuses for not wanting to pay. You always say we're making excuses for why we can't, we're buying too much this, we're buying too much that. Oh, yeah, sorry, buying too much food and gas. Excuse me, I should have known better, right? But no, like these people out here will make they say we make the excuses, but then they're the ones making excuses why you don't want to pay us more. And you don't want us anywhere on the top. Right? You want us to barely get by. You don't want a society with people all just getting by. Okay? That's not what you want. Because people in China are getting by. People in Japan are, getting, and I say getting by, I mean doing good. I'll say doing good. People in China are doing good. All right? People in Japan are doing good. People in other countries are doing good. They want you just doing okay. Right? They don't want you doing too well. Okay? They don't want you doing too bad either. Because if you do too bad, then you'll start realizing the whole system's bullshit. Okay? And that's what we bun through that poverty line where we realize everything's fucking bullshit. It's all fucking lie. All right? That, no, you just don't like the poor. All right? And you don't like the poor. All right? And really, it's because you try to keep Jake poor. So when you think of poor, you think black. All right? That's why Biden said, poor kids are just as smart as white kids. What are you talking about? White kids can be poor too. But when you think about poor, you think about black. You think about brown. Okay? And that's why you try to keep Jake poor, because they're the ones you really want poor. The other white people, it's just logistics. Shit has to happen, right? But really, it's just because you're so greedy, all right? You're just so greedy, okay? And that's just how it is, man. And, slavery was never truly ended. You're still a slave. You're still getting, you're still getting barely by. Here's some watermelon and some chicken, you fucking jigaboo. Now get out of my fucking face. All right? That's still the same shit that's going on today. They say, well, here's your little bit of groceries, all right? So you can live just to work again the next day. All right? Want you dying on me? I got to have you on work on Monday. Right? So that's where they keep you, man. And there's that constant fear that if you do anything or say anything or make one mistake that your job's like that, and guess what? Now you're on the street. Now that is slavery. That is slavery. Okay? There's no job security. They'll tell you that, you're expendable. They'll rehire on a dime, man. They'll rehire. Okay? That's just how it is. And they got people think, America's the greatest country. We're so free. We have it so good. No, you don't. The gas prices are astronomical. The food prices are astronomical. No one can afford to buy cars anymore. All right, cars are just sitting in lots. I don't know if you've drove by a fucking car lot recently. They're just sitting in there. I've never seen car lots fuller in my whole life. Okay, they're just packed to the brim. All right, with vehicle after vehicle after vehicle. Okay, and they've gotten to the point where they want to keep people off of the mine. People say, well, you guys, you young kids with your smartphones and, this and that and your other luxuries, they've already proved that luxuries in the past were more expensive and basic necessities and essentials were cheaper. Now essentials and necessities are higher priced and luxuries are cheaper. Okay? That's some shit. Okay? That is some shit to have it be like that. Okay? So you can't, and it's all these people, they try to blame other people, but at the end of the day, you should be blaming your government. It's the same type of people that's all these goddamn illegals living off of food stamps and all. First of all, illegals can't be on food stamps, all right? And I don't like calling them illegal. Undocumented people, all right? Natives of this land that were expelled and now are ostracized when they try to come back, right? That's really what it was. Native before you were. They aren't native to this land because they really are. Our people are from Israel, okay? But they're here before you, right? So they would be considered the natives of this place, not you, okay? So, with that happening and all that, but you don't like them coming back, and you're saying all these illegals on the food stamp. First of all, that's a lie, because undocumented people cannot get on food stamps, because to get on food stamps, don't know if you know this or not, you need a social security number, you dipshit. You need a social security number. There's actually that's another thing I have in my camera roll. Is it still there? Here it is. It says, are there any of my Democrat liberal friends that are able to explain why it's okay to give illegals health care? I'm looking forward to listening to your BS. Oh, wait. This person said, I was a caseworker working with Medicaid and SNAP. I just retired after 23 years. And I already knew this before this lady did it, but she actually worked there. It said, if you are in this country illegally, you don't get benefits. It's not my opinion. It's my career. I'm so tired of powerful people spreading these lies that inflames hatred of people that don't deserve it. The better question is why they are lying to you. Okay? Why are they lying to you? Okay? And that's just one of those things, man. And it's they'll get lied to, and they don't care. Okay? These illegals on health care, they got health care. So if you don't want illegals getting health care, should Americans get free health care? But you don't want Americans to get free health care. You want them to work. But don't you think health is a basic human right? Okay? That shouldn't be something you have to work and bust your ass over. All right? If you're sick, you should just be able to be healed, right? You shouldn't have to go into debt, all right, because, you fell or hurt and broke your leg and now you're financially ruined. I don't know. Maybe I'm not as much of a piece of shit as you, but I think that should be a basic human right to be able to go and get your leg fixed and not have to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars. And you got to go there. You had to go to the ER because you couldn't drive. Fortunately, ain't nobody else to drive you, so you can't drive yourself. You got a broken leg, so you got to spend a couple $1,000s for the ambulance trip. Then you got to get in there, and you're a little dehydrated, so they put you on fluids. Bag only costs $2 to make. I saw that a brother posted that, and then you charge $300 for a bag of saline, or $600 or $900 for a bag of saline. They did that. They gave you ibuprofen. There's another $100 for one ibuprofen. Hell, man, I could sling you some ibuprofen for cheaper than that. I'd give you for $2 a pill. I'll run by Walgreens and pick it up. I say, here, man, a whole bottle, right? Whole bottle. Slap me $10, right? Still make profit off of a whole bottle. Right? But these guys, one pill, $100, right? Ridiculous. This place is all lies and robbery. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. You want to stay here, Jake. Jake's the prey. You want to stay here. I love it here, man. This place fucking good as fuck, man. I love this place, man. It's got football. It's got Black and Miles, man. They got some fine-ass bitches up in here. Yeah, sure. Yep. Simple. Simplicity. One of Jacob's, least popular talents. Says, actually, they're really popular at being simple. All right, a lot of simple-ass Jakes. This is Isaiah 14:7, and we're going to close out. It says, the whole earth... This isn't it. It's, 6, not 7. Dealing with the king of Babylon and, the Edomites. Isaiah 14:6, and we get Isaiah 14 a lot. All right, dealing with, the whole earth is at rest. They break forth into singing. I talk about that a lot. It also mentions the servants and handmaids. All right, they shall be joined to them. The strangers shall cleave unto the house of Israel. All right. So Isaiah 14:6 says, he who wrote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. Where is it? Where was it? Actually, well, I'm glad I got that, but I think it was actually 17 that we need to get. Yeah, 17. It says Isaiah 14:17. So basically after that, it's talking about, well, really it goes into another topic about, Lucifer being brought down, all right, which is another name for, Esau, Edom, of course. And, how they're going to be brought down by the Lord, even though they're going to try to, set themselves in the throne of the Most High. And, they're going to be basically be made into a mockery and a zoo exhibit. And people are going to look at them and be like, this is the guy? This is him? Right? And one of the things that they were going to ask, and it said, they're basically, you can read it. It says, so if you go up from verse, I just start with like verse 12, Isaiah 14:12 on down to here in 17. But yeah, so that's where I would read. That can be your homework. But Isaiah 14:17, it says, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners, which means that didn't free his prisoners. Okay? And Esau doesn't free his prisoners. Okay? He doesn't. Okay? So, like I said, even in Roman times, if they were able to buy, they still weren't really a full Roman citizen. They were able to buy. They were never really freed, right? They were just not subjected to certain of the bondage anymore. They just they basically bought out of that version of slavery and into a lesser version of slavery. And that's where we're at now. We're not in the same slavery as the transatlantic slave trade. We're just in a lesser version of slavery. That's all it is. All right, they got smarter with it, not nicer. Okay, slavery was never truly ended. Okay, and anybody thinks that it was ended, it's true that they're not, not a lot working up in the cogs of the mind. Okay, so that's where we're going to close out. All right, Lord was edifying. Again, got any questions, drop them down below. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory again to the Most High and His Son, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakak Wadash. I want to say shalom to you brothers and sisters out there. Keep enduring, keep the faith. We're almost out of this hell. All right, until next one, Lord willing, shalom.